A very warm good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Evening Review Show. I'm your host, Matthias Haufiko. Well, plans are underway, of course, by all stakeholders to ensure that the registration process for the national elections later this year goes smoothly, and also the polls in November, of course, that is. Today there was the launch, there was the validation workshop for the Elections and Media Monitoring Toolkit. That workshop took place earlier this morning, and for that we have in studio the Media Ombudsman, Mr. John Nakuta. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Matthias, and thanks for the invitation.
No, it's good to have you here. Well, this validation workshop, maybe can you just, for the benefit of the viewer, just a brief summary before we get into the gist of the discussion as to what this is all about and what the project is all about.
Yeah. Well, as you may recall, the Media Ombudsman, in terms of the Code of Ethics and Conduct for the Namibian media, is having a very specific mandate to enforce the code and to hold journalists and media houses accountable in terms of the high standards of accountability, in terms of fair reporting, professional reporting, neutral reporting, in terms of that. So, and the code is also saying during any election period and referendums for that matter, journalists and media houses are supposed to live up to this code in this to do their work ethically and professionally. So what we were just saying as the Office of the Media Ombudsman say, how would we hold journalists and media houses accountable? So basically what we then came up with was like the idea was then conceptualized to embark on a first of its kind in the context of Namibia, what we call an election media monitoring project. So that's basically it. The idea is to hold media houses accountable to make sure that they would report accurately, neutrally, objectively, and fairly on all political parties and all candidates registered for the upcoming election. And that's really is the main driving force behind this.
And someone may ask then during the election and campaign period, as the monitoring is being done, would you then wait post-elections to then collate the data and take action, or how will it work? If you see perhaps during campaigns certain candidates are being sidelined by the media, would you then chip in, or how would it work?
It's actually a very good question, Matthias. The idea is to cover the whole entire electoral process. As you know, in terms of the Electoral Act and even worldwide, any election can be demarcated or segregated in three distinct phases. And that is the pre-election phase, the election day phase, like for us, election days, 1 day normally, and then what happens after the post-election phase, together with the announcement of the election result, are there disputes and whatever. So this project, monitoring exercise, literally will kick off next month if everything goes according to plan, to report on, because the ECN announced in terms of the electoral calendar that they would start on the 3rd of June with the national registration process of all of us. So that it's very important then to see to what extent is the media reporting on issues like this. Because remember, the media is also having a greater objective and task to report and to educate. So to what extent is the media therefore then playing a role? So coming back to your question then, do you wait until the end of the period to now complain? No, in fact, the project is really not so much about complaining, it's but to extract trends from this whole reporting and coverage of the media. So what is happening in terms of this, the idea is to collect the data by professional company with the necessary experience in media monitoring, and the company would then feed the media ombudsman with the team that would be working on, and we call that team a data analysis team from the data that was collected. And the idea is to issue bi-weekly and monthly reports for the entire period, starting in June, ending with the elections and the announcement of the election result. So for the next at least 6 months, that we would be covering and monitoring this. And so the idea would then to alert whoever needs to be alerted on the specific trends that we've drawn from this monitoring exercise.
This exercise, and I'm sure projects of this nature would normally come about because there's certain shortcomings that has been identified within the system. What are some of those perhaps that prompted the formulation of this project?
I won't say because of shortcomings. To be very honest, that was not even when we sat down and conceptualized the idea. The idea was not what is being done in Matis. The idea was that more, it's like, how can the Office of the Media Ombudsman give credence to its mandate? Because the mandate is to hold media houses and journalists accountable. So how can we introspect in a proactive manner? That is really what this thing is all about. So instead of waiting for people to complain, let us proactively embark on a program that would extract and capture certain trends within the media so that if need be, some of these things can be addressed. For example, so one of the things, one of the pillars of this exercise would be in terms of capturing the tone and the agenda setting from the various media houses. In that regard, the idea would be to monitor who gets exposure. At what extent does one candidate over the long run, can we be said that there seems to be either a direct or an indirect attempt of a certain media house, whichever that media house would be, to give preferential coverage, so to speak, to one candidate, to one political party, but also the other way around is that who is left out? Who is only reported on 11 o'clock in the evening and so forth? Even though you've been reported on, you've been covered, but who watches the news or this broadcast at 11 o'clock? So the idea, as I said, the ultimate idea is to really to measure media outcomes on what is being reported and to then alert whoever wants to use this information for whatever purpose to use that.
I'm just thinking of the issue of self-censorship. Will a project of this nature not perhaps put media houses in a corner to say we need to report in a certain manner to avoid being flagged by those who are monitoring us? But what do you say to such concerns and claims?
I've heard that concern was also expressed, to be very honest, this morning. One of the attendees mentioned that. And it made me think. And I said, but the code actually demands of you to report in a particular manner. Objectively, professionally, neutrally, and without bias. So in a way, that is the scope within. And everything in the code really falls within the square pegs of those broad, if we can call it, criteria. And incidentally, as I also mentioned, next week, I would be participating in a workshop organized for all independent content regulators throughout Africa. We call that person the Media Ombudsman. It's called by different names, obviously, all over the world. But the point that I'm trying to make is that next week we are meeting, all of us, in Cape Town, and one of the agenda points is media monitoring, to be done by offices of the media ombudsman,
Yeah.
so to speak. So in a way, not even in a way, it's like, so it is not unique to Namibia. There is a concern that, of course, you know it, that the media is powerful. And I don't need to remind you how powerful the media is. And the point is just that you must use your power in a responsible, the media that is, should use its power in a responsible manner. And one way of checking on us, holding ourselves accountable, is by way of having such a thing. So the idea of self-censorship, I honestly don't think it's part of censoring, because you can still report.
Yeah.
But the question is, what is it that you are reporting it on? How are you reporting on? Who are you reporting on? Who are you giving preferential coverage, and whom are you deliberately or unwittingly leaving out from your coverage? That's really the essence and the rationale behind a election monitoring exercise like this.
Yeah. You've mentioned the upcoming workshop that you'll attend in Cape Town with your peers in this regard. What one would like to know, and it's a conversation that's really been brewing over I think over the past recent years, the issue of regulating online content. With the elections coming up, is your attention only based on traditional media? How would you go about that?
I understand.
How would you go about that?
Yeah. The code is clear, because it would be it's a case of impossibility to try and regulate the entire social media space. But the code is clear. The media ombudsman is having a mandate and jurisdiction, whereas when it comes to online media and on footprints, but then only in the context of a specific media house that have signed up to the code of conduct, which of course, as you know, is voluntary. And if that media house is having a social media, like Facebook page, you name them, only then, and there is a complaint with regard to that media house with reference to what has been posted and published on their online platforms, then the media ombudsman, of course, will have jurisdiction over such a complaint. And I had a few of those ones, but not on Facebook, X, or all the other social media. There must be a nexus, a link between the media house and the particular social media medium.
Because one of the reasons why I asked that also is because both from candidates and political parties' point of view and media houses' point of view, everyone would surely be harnessing the benefits that comes with putting news out there, and also the platforms it gives to campaign.
It's actually a good point, because one of the things that we will be discussing next week is the issue of disinformation and misinformation, which is a big thing. And obviously is also a concern during elections. And I think the alarm bells has been raised with reference to it is almost like a pandemic, especially during election time. But unfortunately, a monitoring project such as this cannot do everything under the sun. It's way too costly. It requires a lot of financial resources, human resources, technology, and so forth. So for that reason, this and also with reference to jurisdiction, the media ombudsman do not have jurisdiction over political parties. For that, the ECN is there. But the media ombudsman is having jurisdiction over media houses. And that's hence the name media ombudsman. So it's a question of what did you as a media house report? How did your journalists report on political parties and candidates? So we are not observing and monitoring political parties through this. Someone else can do that. and because that is not the mandate, as I said, of the media ombudsman. Our mandate is on the media houses and journalists.
Well, Mr. Nakuta, we wait for a short break, and we'll be back to continue this conversation.
Thank you very much.
To our viewers, wait for a short break. Stay tuned.
Neo Paints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neo Paints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neo Paints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
Well, we're back from the short break. Mr. Nakuta, there's been a time where the office of the media ombudsman was rather operating in the shadows, more like in the dark, and not many people knew about the work of the media ombudsman. Since you and your team also came on board, there's been a bit more movement in that regard. That also coincided, surprisingly or sadly, with us losing our rankings that we so much boasted about. Is it the case of your office really just pulling off the bandage that was on a wound that was never really treated?
No, I won't say that. Yeah, it's probably one of the side effects, but I really won't say that because I've also read the latest report of Borders Journalists. What is it? Reporters Without Borders. And they made the announcement last week that we have dropped significantly internationally. From 22 internationally, I think we are now 34, if I'm not mistaken. From number 1, we are now number 2 in Africa. I was saying to myself, I was wondering, it's almost as if they are holding old incidents that happened during the COVID time. They are honestly still reporting on how COVID was handled. The incident that one of your journalists had with the alteration that she had with one of the staff members, with the police.
For the security detail of the president.
Those kind of things. And I mean, honestly, that COVID was 2020. 4 years later, you are still using that as a yardstick. And of course, there are other things also. I'm not saying only those ones, but those ones seems to, these past events, and I think Frank also mentioned it this morning, the chairperson of the EFN. It's as if those things are still being used against us. But in as much as we still welcome the very high position that we have, at least in Africa, number 2, everything is really not so, if I can use the word honky-dory. It's really not as if we don't have a problem. I've mentioned about 3 weeks ago, and I've mentioned it also sometime last week when I was interviewed. It's like we had last year a very sad incident. Strikingly, it didn't seemingly doesn't feature in this year's report, and that is the suspension of the news as the managing editor of the New Era. Terrible thing, because the person in question purportedly was suspended for having penned a very critical editorial on the judiciary. We don't have any time for secrecy within the judiciary, something along those lines. As the media ombudsman, even now I did not receive an official complaint. I keep on reading that editorial to try and find out what really was so offensive that Mr. Beekers said in this, that caused him, amongst others, to have lost his, to have been suspended. So these things are happening. The rankings also talk about every now and then threats verbal threats being made to journalists by the politicians, those things count, because it is not just physical attacks on journalists that would count against you. These are threats that, and everyone is not the you and I's of this world that speak our mind and us not. We are not afraid to speak truth to power. Some people are easily intimidated. So the notion of self-censorship that we all know is also very prevalent in state institutions. So is it the John Nakuta that has led to the downgrading of Namibia overall? I would say that is that cannot be the case.
Yeah.
That is really not the case.
Well, some might also argue that the yardsticks that they used to measure to come up with these rankings have not changed. So why are we then now crying foul?
That's also true. And to be very honest, I did not make a critical point, to really look at the indicators that they are using. And as you said, these indicators has been used at least for some time now. If that was used in the past, why are we now crying? So basically, when we were on top, it was fine. But now, since we are now 34 in the world, we are now saying no, this can't be fine. Yeah. But of course, it gives us all food for thought, I suppose, to think about it. What is it that we are doing right? What is it that we are not doing right, and where can we improve? And this monitoring tool, basically, honestly, is a way to keep us all, not just the media, because this information that we will gather, it's like there's a specific provision within the tool specifically dedicated to the election monitoring body, the ECN, in terms of how do they conduct their business. Are they forthcoming in terms of relevant information? Because access to information is a right. The minister has indicated that if everything goes well, by the end of June, the information commissioner probably would be appointed. We don't know how feasible that is, but at least there seems to be movement on that front. So this tool is trying to capture all those things, so as to broaden the scope of democracy and to have people exercise these rights that are written in our constitution.
Just your exit remarks, Mr. Nakuta, of course, with the first major step towards the election starting in June, that is the voter registration. Maybe just your exit remarks as far as that is concerned in the monitoring toolkit as well.
Okay. Exit remarks in terms of the program? Okay. Yes, I can but just say that we were told that our old voter cards has expired. It's of no use. So for all of those that wants to, or that is planning to participate in the election, which of course is our civic duty, that with this project we are trying to educate also the people. That's why we are starting with the national registration process, to monitor, to educate, to alert, to point out trends, which regions are not sufficiently covered, and so forth, as part of contributing in building the democratic society in Namibia that we so much want, because this is the only country that we have. And so I can just encourage everyone to watch the space. The idea is to collaborate with institutions such as yourselves, the Namibian Sun, and maybe I must thank you also for what I've seen in today's paper. And you told me earlier that you want to, your plan is to have this almost on a weekly basis, covering elections and whatever. I want to congratulate you, and if you were to find it appropriate, that we can also join hands as part of your contribution, because these bi-weekly and bi-monthly reports that we're planning to publish, we can use your space very excellently, because the idea is to come up with pictorials, information, so as to give the general public an idea as to what did we pick up, what is the what has been reported on, what has not been reported on, who has been reported on, who has not been reported on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Nakuta, thank you very much for your time, and we wish you well with your work.
Thank you very much, Matthias.
Thank you. Well, to our viewers, that's it from the Evening Review team. See you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a pleasant evening.